The aroma archetype is an archetype largely consisting of plant monsters, with one rock monster that were introduced in Clash of Rebellions. The archetype's monsters all derive their names from tools and various species of flowers, all of which are used to produce and utilize medicinal and culinary herbs. In terms of the design, the aroma monsters all get their names from the various herbs, flowers and spices that are essential to aromatherapy. This is where the archetype's gimmick originates, as the effects that revolve around gaining life points are symbolic of the health benefits of aromatics in medicinal and culinary use, which provide relaxing, invigorating or delicious scents and flavours and can help reduce stress. The archetype is female-centric, with only 3 males in the set: Aromage Bergamot, Aromage Cananga and Aromage. At this time, aromatherapy Angelica can only combine with the females of the archetype: Aromage Jasmine, Aromage Rosemary and Aromage Marjoram, causing the male presence to languish. The aromatherapy counterparts are light attribute compared to their main deck forms, suggesting that they become angels once they combine with aromatherapy Angelica. Aroma Jar is the sole rock-type monster, otherwise plant-oriented archetype, and is the only inanimate object among the rest of the human-like monsters. All of the main deck Aromage monsters are typed with each of the elemental attributes based on the plant they're inspired by. Their names and artwork suggest that they are all mages that specialize in magic involving scents derived from plants. In terms of the playing style, all plant-type aroma monsters share 2 common types of effects: a continuous effect that applies while their controller has more life points than their opponents, and a trigger effect that activates when their controller gains life points. The continuous effect supports plant-type monsters and encourages the controller to engage in battle by granting them advantages in that area against the opponent, while the trigger effect focuses upon increasing utility, partly through field disruption. So we have the examples of the Aromage Bergamot. The controller's plant monsters inflict piercing damage, that's a continuous effect. Its trigger effect is it gains 1000 attack and defense until the end of the opponent's next turn. The Aromage Cananga, its continuous effect is to reduce the attack and defense of the opponent's monsters by 500, and its trigger effect is to target and return a spell or trap card the opponent controls to the hand. For Aromage Jasmine, the continuous effect is to allow 1 additional normal summon set for a plant monster, and the trigger effect, the controller draws a card. For Aromage Laurel, its continuous effect is to special summon itself from your hand, with the trigger effect being it to target 1 plant monster on the field and treat it as a tuner for this turn. For Aromage Marjoram, the continuous effect is to take no battle damage from battles involving your plant monsters, and the trigger effect is to target cards in your opponent's graveyard up to the number of aroma monsters you control and banish them. For Aromage Rosemary, the continuous effect is the opponent cannot activate monster effects when the controller's plant monster attacks until the end of the damage step, and its trigger effect to target and change a face monster's battle position. For Aromatherapy Angelica, its continuous effect is to discard itself and target another aroma monster in the graveyard to increase life points by the target's attack. Its trigger effect is to special summon from the graveyard if you control another aroma monster, but is banished when it leaves the field. For Aromatherapy Jasmine, its continuous effect is this card and plant monsters this card points to cannot be destroyed by battle. Its trigger effect is to add 1 plant monster from your deck to the hand. For Aromatherapy Rosemary, its continuous effect is all plant monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense, and its trigger effect is to target face-up cards, has its effects negated for the turn. And Aromatherapy Sweet Marjoram, its continuous effect is to have the opponent not being able to target plant monsters you control with card effects, and the trigger effect is to target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. The battling aspect that is encouraged by the archetype is also pronounced by its support cards, Aroma Jar, Aroma Garden, and Aroma Gardening. Aroma Jar is a flip monster whose flip effect bestows 500 life points upon the controller during either player's end phase, while it remains face up. Additionally, its other effect has interactivity with its flip effect, as it also defends itself from destruction by battle if it was flip face up. The archetype's field spell card, the Aroma Garden, grants the controller 500 life points during their turn when they control an aroma monster, while additionally bolstering the attack and defense of all their monsters by 500 until the end of the opponent's next turn. The downside of battling is also covered by the card, which increases the controller's life points by 1000 when an aroma monster they control is destroyed and sent to the graveyard. Aroma Gardening therefore provides summoning support by bestowing 1000 life points when an aroma monster is summoned except during the damage step. as well as allowing an emergency summon if you've taken damage and your life points have dropped below the opponents when they attempt to attack. The deck also contains 3 continuous trap cards, which further assist the controller by turning the life points they gained into a utilizable asset. Dried Winds serves as a means to put pressure on the opponent by having the controller target and destroy a monster the opponent controls each time they gain life points. The card further takes advantage of its controller's tendency to amass large amounts of life points by allowing them to pay life points equal to the difference between their life points and their opponents to destroy monsters with equal or less attack than the amount of life points paid, provided the controller has at least 3,000 more life points than the opponent. Human Winds provides the deck with much needed speed, allowing the controller to search out aroma monsters from their deck at the cost of 1,000 life points. A small sum to pay for the controller if the controller should find themselves disadvantaged in life points count compared to their opponent. The card further helps them make up the deficit, providing a steady stream of 500 life points per turn until the deficit is bridged. Blessed Wings provides graveyard support by not only allowing them to manipulate what goes into and comes out of the graveyard with a 500 life point boost to boot, but also providing a revival of aroma monsters back to the field at the paltry price of 1,000 life points. All of these trap cards are best protected by Imperial Custom. The archetype's efficacy can be enhanced with the use of cards that increase the life points of the controller. Such cards should preferably do so either by a significant margin or with control over when they activate by the player, such as with Poison of the Old Man and Aegis of Gaia, to keep the continuous effects of the aroma monsters active, as several of the aroma monsters, except Aromage Bergamot, have low attack and defense, and still emphasize battling cards such as Juragido and Nutrient Z to keep your life safe while fulfilling the archetype's mandate of increasing your life points and maintaining a high life point count. Alternatively, you can use Wabuku to protect your life points and your monsters. The aroma archetype also performs well with disabling and preventative cards such as Anti-Spell Fragrance to complement the spell and trap bouncing effect of Aromage Kananga, Lose One Turn, and Cactus Bouncer to complement the extra normal summon effect of Aromage Jasmine and Magic Planter and Booby Trap E to make use of the many continuous trap cards that the deck utilizes, such as Humid Winds, Dried Winds, and the aforementioned Lose One Turn and Anti-Spell Fragrance. In terms of the weaknesses, given that the archetype focuses on gaining life points, it is extremely vulnerable to cards such as Earthbound Greater, Linewalker, Bad Reaction to Smoochie, and Dark Lord Nurse Reficule, which attempt to subvert life point gaining effects and instead damage you for the same amount. Asleep at the Switch presents the archetype with another weakness, as it can be used to destroy aroma monsters when their controller gains life points, an incredibly common occurrence for the deck. If one does not directly consider the life point aspect of these monsters as a consideration, the archetype can still be subdued through many other means. More generally, effect negators like Skill Drain, Angel 07, Infinite Impermanence, and Majesty's Fiend can shut down aromage effects. The summoning emphasis of some of the aroma cards can also be put in check via Narrow Pass, Summon Limit, and Summon Breaker. The weakness of the attributes make them vulnerable to Ghost and Match and Battle of the Elements. Aroma monsters can also be easily attributed through Kaiju's, Lava Golem, and other examples, unless you control Cactus Bouncer, and easily removed from the field through general field control due to a lack of card effect, immunity, back row removal, and total uselessness off of the field. Finally, the known aromage monsters thus so far are not of hefty attack and defense, except for the secondary effect of Bergamot. Therefore, unless the effect of Rosemary is serving as a temporary bridle against monsters at a pinch, they can easily be held against more aggressive and faster deck builds. The back row support is highly vulnerable to general spell and trap card removal, and furthermore, none of these cards have effects when they're destroyed or are in the graveyard, nor effects that banish themselves from the graveyard for other effects. The first effect of Humid Winds can also be stopped by Thunder King Ryo, Droll Knockbird, and Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. The later two, which can effectively cause a waste of an eighth of one's total life points. Aroma Jar is a winged attribute rock type flip effect monster. It's level 1 with 500 attack and 400 defense. If this card is flipped face up, this card cannot be destroyed by battle, while it is face up on the field. If this card is flipped face up during each player's end phase, you gain 500 life points. This is a consistency for the Aroma deck. It likes to have as many life point boosting effects as possible. The higher your life points, the more you preserve for yourself within the duel, and those monsters then get additional effects off of you gaining life points. It's strange that this is a jar card, as most of the other jars, including Morphing Jar number 2, Cyber Jar, and some other jar cards, have had bans because of them being considered too powerful. This is the exception to the rule, but I suppose you can negate the prevention from being destroyed by battle effect by other cards as a way of removing this as an example, such as through effect beta. Aroma Bergamot is a fire attribute plant type level 6 with 2400 attack and 1800 defense. While your life point is higher than your opponent's, if a plant type monster you control attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. Once per turn, if you gain life points, this card gains 1000 attack and defense until the end of your opponent's turn. I believe this is actually the most powerful of their normal deck monster cards, and it's quite decent as it grants all of your plant type monsters the ability to do piercing battle damage so long as your life points are higher than the opponent's. And each turn, so long as you gain life points and this card is on the field, it gains 1000 attack and defense until the end of your opponent's turn. That means it stays as a 3400 attack monster and is quite difficult to get over. Aromage Kananga is a earth attribute plant type level 3 with 1400 attack and 1000 defense. While your life points are higher than your opponent's, face-up monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack and defense. Once per turn, if you gain life points, target one spell or trap card your opponent controls, return it to the hand. The first spell effect helps to reduce your opponent's monsters' attack and defense, making it easier for your weaker monsters to get over those. It also has the opportunity, when you gain life points, to take a spell or trap card the opponent has and return that to the hand, making it more difficult for your opponent to interact against this deck, and makes it easier for you to get your combos out. Aromage Jasmine is a light attribute plant type level 2 with 100 attack and 1900 defense. During the main phase, while your life points are higher than your opponent's, you can normal summon one plant monster in addition to your normal summon set, except Aromage Jasmine. You can only gain this effect once per turn. And once per turn, if you gain life points, draw one card. The initial effect of this card is, provided your life points are higher, you can gain an additional normal summon of a plant monster, and it doesn't have to be specific within the archetype, it can be any plant monster, so you can get 2 normal summons each and every turn consistently. If you gain life points in the turn, you get to draw an additional card, which provides you with more card advantage. Also note that with 1900 defense points, it is quite tricky for your opponent to get over when you've got your full setup on board. Aromage Laurel is a wind attribute plant type level 1 with 800 attack and 0 defense. If your life points are higher than your opponent's, you can special summon this card from your hand. If you gain life points, target one tuner plant monster on the field, it is treated as a tuner this turn. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can gain 500 life points. You can only use each effect of Aromage Laurel once per turn. First part of the effect, provided your life points are higher than your opponent's, you get to instantly special summon this card from the hand, and you can choose a non-tuner plant monster on the field, and it can be treated as a tuner this turn. So the higher level ones can make you go into a much stronger synchro monster. When this card is sent to the graveyard, including obviously when it's used as part of a synchro summon as an example, or through the link summoning of one of their monsters, you gain 500 life points. It's a very small increase in life points, but every boost helps support the deck. Aromage Marjoram is a dark attribute plant type effect monster. It's a level 5 with 2000 attack and 1600 defense. While your life points are higher than your opponent's, you can take no battle damage from battles involving your plant monsters. You can only use each of these effects of Aromage Marjoram once per turn. If a plant monster you control is destroyed in battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand and then gain 500 life points. If you gain life points, target a number of cards in your opponent's graveyard up to the number of aroma monsters you control and banish them. First part of the effect allows you to take no battle damage provided you have higher life points than the opponent for any of your plant monsters. That's decent as it prevents your opponent from chipping away enough to get rid of this advantage. As soon as a plant monster you control is destroyed in battle and sent to the graveyard, this card can straight away be special summoned and you gain an additional 500 life points. The other ability, as soon as you gain life points, you get to target a number of cards in the opponent's graveyard, equivalent to the number of aroma monsters you control, and banish them. And they can be anything. It can be spell, trap, or monsters, it doesn't matter. But you can just get rid of a number of cards, which will make it more difficult for your opponent to get those cards back. Aromage Rosemary is a water attribute plant type effect monster, level 4 with 1800 attack and 700 defense. While your life points are higher than your opponent's, if a plant monster you control attacks, your opponent cannot activate monster effects until the end of the damage step. Once per turn, if you gain life points, target one face-up monster on the field, change its battle position. This is one of the key cards within the deck, and it's probably the strongest of the level 4 monsters that they already have. Provided you have higher life points than your opponents, If a plant monster you control attacks, your opponent just cannot activate any monster effects until the end of the damage step, which can be quite useful. And as soon as you gain life points in a turn, you can alter the battle position of an opponent's monster or even one of your own. And this can be useful if the attack or defense of the monster happens to be weaker than the other position it was already in, making it much easier to get over those cards. Aroma Lilith Magnolia is a dark attribute plant type fusion effect monster. It's a level 8 with 2600 attack and 1800 defense. It requires an aroma monster and a plant monster. While your life points are higher than your opponent's, plant monsters you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Once per turn, you can pay 2000 life points, banish cards on the field equal to the number of humid winds, dried winds, and blessed winds you control. Once per turn, if you gain life points, even during the damage step, you can make all plant monsters you currently control gain attack equal to the life points gained until the end of this turn. The fusion summon on this card isn't too bad, as it just needs one aroma monster and it can be any of those plus an additional plant monster. So if you splash this within like the Recadet, then that can actually work quite well. Provided your life points are higher than your opponent's, all of your plant monsters cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, so it provides them with that level of immunity. And once per turn, you can pay 2000 life points, which isn't bad, as you can generate life points within the deck pretty quickly. You can banish cards on the field equal to the number of humid winds, dried winds, and blessed winds, so that's up to 3 cards, but you have to banish the cards equivalent. So if you and your opponent have cards on the field and your opponent only has 2 cards and you have all 3 of these cards, you're going to have to banish one of your cards in order to meet the condition of this card, so you do need to be aware of that. Once a turn, provided you gain life points except during the damage step, you can make all plant monsters you currently control gain attack equal to the life point gain. This is only until the end of the turn, but it's a decent enough effect to boost your cards to a point where they can get rid of most of your opponent's threat. Aroma Lilith Rosalina is a dark attribute plant type tuner effect monster. It's a level 1 with 0 attack and defense. As a quick effect, you can discard this card, then target one aroma monster you control. It gains life points equal to half its attack. If this card is null or special summoned, you can special summon one non-tuner aroma monster from your deck. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn, except plant monsters. You can only use each effect of Aroma Lilith Rosalina once per turn. This is another one of the tuner monsters that I have. It's got 0 attack and defense, but that's not necessarily a problem. As soon as this card is discarded, you can just take an aroma monster you control and gain life points equal to half its attack, and it doesn't have to be its original attack. If you think with Bergamot, it can become, through its own effect, a 3400 attack monster. Therefore, you can take an increase of 1700 life points. If this card happens to be null or special summoned, you get to special summon a non-tuner aroma monster from your deck, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to lock you into a specific level, but you are locked into just special summoning plant type monsters for the duration of the turn. This is an easy way to go into some of your higher level monsters without too much sacrifice. Aroma Lilith Rosemary is a dark attribute plant type link 3 effect monster. Its link points are the bottom left, the bottom and the bottom right, and it has 2200 attack points. It needs 2+ plant monsters. If this card is special summoned, you can add one aroma card from your deck to your hand. If you gain life points even during the damage step, you can special summon up to 3 aroma monsters from your hand to your zones this card points to. You can attribute one monster this card points to, then target one card on the field and banish it. And if you do, gain 1000 life points. You can only use each effect of Aroma Lilith Rosemary once per turn. The summoning on this card isn't too difficult, as getting 3 of your plant monsters onto the field is fine. The deck pretty much works quite well for it. When this card is special summoned, so it can actually be through its additional summon or revive from the graveyard, you can search for an aroma card from your deck and add that straight to the hand. If you gain life points, even including at the damage step, you can special summon up to 3 aroma monsters from the hand to the link points of this card. In doing so, it does provide you the ability to tribute a monster this card points to, and target a card on the field, it gets banished, and you get the benefit of an additional 1000 life points. There are currently only 2 link monsters that the deck has, and the other one isn't so impressive. This is kind of an upgrade to what they already have. Aroma Cerathy Angelica is a light attribute plant type tuner effect monster. It's a level 1 with 0 attack and defense. During either player's turn, you can discard this card, then target one aroma monster in your graveyard, gain life points equal to that target's attack. While your life points are higher than your opponent's, you control an aroma monster and this card is in the graveyard. You can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of Aroma Angelica once per turn. This is another tuner monster that the deck has, and it's probably the weaker of the two. Either turn, you're able to discard this card, then just choose an aroma monster in your graveyard and gain life points equal to that target's attack. This one is a little bit better than the other tuner for life point gain, as the previous one was just half of the attack points of the monster. This is the full amount. While your life points are higher than the opponent's, and you control an aroma monster, this card can be special summoned from the graveyard, but when it's done this way, it then gets banished after it's used. So it has multiple forms of utility, but it can only be used a set amount of times. Aroma Jasmine is a light attribute plant type link monster. Its link points are the bottom left and the bottom right, and it's linked to monster. It has 1800 attack and it requires 2 plant monsters. If your life points are higher than your opponent's, this card and any plant monster it points to cannot be destroyed by battle. You can tribute one monster this card points to, special summon one plant monster from your deck in defense position. You can only use this effect of Aroma Jasmine once per turn. Once per turn, if you gain life points, add one plant monster from your deck to your hand. The summoning on this card isn't too bad, as it just needs 2 plant monsters. It doesn't even have to be within its own archetype. Provided your life points are higher than your opponent's, this card and any plant monsters this card points to cannot be destroyed by battle, so it does provide some form of protection. Combine this with the other one and you've got various forms of protection for certain cards. You're able to tribute a monster this card points to and just special summon a plant monster from the deck. It does have to be in defense position, but that's only for the duration of that turn. It doesn't have to really sit there. This effect can only be used once a turn, but that's fine. And if you gain life points, you get to just search for a plant monster from your deck to your hand. It doesn't even have to be an in-archetype type card, so long as it's a plant. Searching for the card is very consistent and means that since you're constantly increasing your life points, this is a decent way of searching for the specific cards you want rather than running random support cards. Aroma Rosemary is a light attribute plant type synchro effect monster. It's a level 5 with 2000 attack and 900 defense. It requires a tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner monsters. While your life points are higher than your opponent's, all plant type monsters you control gain a 500 attack and defense. Once per turn, if you gain life points, target one face-up card your opponent controls. That face-up card has its effects negated until the end of the turn. Summoning on this is pretty easy, as it just needs a tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters, and so generic. Provided your life points are higher than your opponent's, all plant type monsters you have gain 500 attack and defense, so this helps to improve the stat lineups of even your weakest monsters. Bear in mind that there is another one, I think that's the Kanaga, which has the ability to suppress your opponent's life attack and defense points by 500, so you can make the difference about 1000 each way. And provided you gain life points each and every turn, you can just take a face-up card the opponent controls and negate its effects for the duration of the turn. It doesn't have to just be a monster, it could be a face-up spell or trap card. Aroma Sweet Marjoram is a light attribute plant type synchro monster. It's a level 6 with 2200 attack and 2000 defense. It requires a tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner monsters. While your life points are higher than your opponent's, your opponent cannot target plant monsters you control with card effects. You can only use each of the following effects of Aroma Sweet Marjoram once per turn. If this card is synchro summoned, you can add 1 Humid Winds, Dried Winds, or Blessed Winds from your deck to your hand. Or if you gain life points, target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. The summoning on this isn't difficult, as it just needs 2 generic cards. And so long as your life points are higher than the opponent's, your opponent cannot target plant monsters you control with card effects. There's also the one that prevents your plant monsters from being destroyed by card effects. So if you have both cards on the field, you have the double utility of protection. And there's also the one that protects your monsters from being destroyed by battle. Having all 3 of those extra monsters will provide the full rounded protection. The searching ability when this card is synchro summoned lets you add 1 of the 3 continuous trap cards, and each of them has different effects which help to support the operation of the deck. Or you can choose, when you gain life points, to just target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. It can be either a spell, a trap, or a monster, and it's just whenever you gain life points. These are both once per turn effects, but bear in mind that they can be used interchangeably as and when you need. Aroma Blend is a normal spell card. The effect is to discard 1 card, Place one Humid Winds, Dry Winds, or Blessed Winds from your hand or deck face up in your spell and trap zone. You can banish this card from your graveyard, fusion summon one plant fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing its materials from your hand or field. If your life points are higher than your opponent's, you can also banish plant monsters from your graveyard as a material. You can only use each effect of Aroma Blend once per turn. The nice thing about this card is, unlike the other ones which just search for those cards, this not only lets you search for the card, it puts it face up in your spell and trap zone, so you don't have to wait for the next turn, as often that's the weakness of trap cards. It does come at the discard cost, so that is a disadvantage to it, but that's fine as monsters in the graveyard can be recovered through various means, and you can banish this card and it treats itself as a polymerization. If you happen to have higher life points than your opponents, not only are you able to use the materials from the hand or the field, but also from the graveyard, which means you're not using additional resources. Aroma Garden is a field spell card. The effect is once per turn, if you control an aroma monster, you gain 500 life points. Also, all monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense until the end of the opponent's next turn, even if this card leaves the field. If face-up aroma monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you gain 1000 life points. The first part of the effect, provided you have an aroma monster, you can gain additional 500 life points, and that's a consistent gaining of life points so long as you can meet that condition. All monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense until the end of the opponent's next turn. And even though this is a temporary increase, if you add in all the other increases and decreases to the opponent, this will make quite a difference, even though a lot of the aroma monsters are quite weak. If a face-up aroma monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, you also gain an additional 1000 life points. This is a way of topping up your life points to a point where they are above and beyond your opponent, and it will be very difficult for them to get you down to below their life points. Aroma Gardening is a continuous spell card. If you normal or special summon an aroma monster except during the damage step, you gain 1000 life points. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, while your life points are lower than your opponent's, you can special summon one aroma monster from your deck. You can only use each effect of Aroma Gardening once per turn. Provided you normal special summon an aroma monster, you are able to instantly get 1000 life points. And when an opponent's monster declares an attack, if you have lower life points than the opponent, you can instantly special summon an aroma monster from your deck. So either way, it does have the double utility. Either you're gaining more life points when an aroma monster is actually normal or special summoned, or if your life points are threatened and weaker, then it tries to make up for that by giving you extra support from your main deck. Aroma Healing is a normal trap card. The effect is to gain 1000 life points for each aroma monster with a different name. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one aroma monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field, then gain 500 life points. You can only use one Aroma Healing effect per turn and only once that turn. The first ability on this card lets you instantly gain 1000 life points for each aroma monster on the field with a different name. If you've got multiple on the field, you can be gaining some of 3000 or so life points, maybe a little bit more if you want to be generous. And that is a consistent increase. Even though it's a one-off boost, it might be enough for you to then trigger off certain effects, which only work when your life points are higher than your opponent's. By banishing this card, you can take a aroma monster in your graveyard and it gets to special summon itself, and you gain 500 life points. But it gets banished when it leaves the field, so that's the downside of this effect. Blessed Winds is a continuous trap card. The effect is you can activate one of the following effects. Send one plant monster from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard to gain 5 life points. Or target one plant monster in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, then gain 500 life points, or pay 1000 life points to special summon one aroma monster from your graveyard. You can only use this effect of Blessed Wings once per turn. Each and every turn, you can use one of any of the 3 effects depending on your situation and what works best for you. First ability just lets you send a plant monster from the hand or face up on the field to the graveyard to gain 500 life points. Maybe the life points are more needed, and maybe the cards that you want happen to be in the hand that you just don't need for that time. Or the second ability lets you take a plant monster in your graveyard, so it really works with the first effect to first pitch the card, and that gets shuffled back into the deck, and you get to then gain an additional 500 life points. or the final version, which works also with the first part of the effect. By paying 1,000 life points, you just get to special summon an aroma monster from your graveyard. So pitching a card from the hand to gain 500 life points, and then paying 1,000 life points the following turn to revive that monster, you're really only at a deficit of 500 life points. Dried Winds is a continuous trap card. The effect is if you gain life points, target one face-up monster your opponent controls, destroy it. If you control an aroma monster and your life points are at least 3,000 higher than your opponent's, you can pay life points equal to the difference, destroy face-up monsters your opponent controls, whose combined attack is less than or equal to the life points you paid to activate this effect. You can only use each effect of Dried Winds once per turn. First ability, provided you gain life points, lets you take a face-up monster your opponent controls and straight away destroy it. Provided you have an aroma monster and your life points are at least 3,000 higher than your opponent's, by paying life points equal to that difference, you're able to destroy any face-up monsters that happen to be combined attack is less than or equal to the life points you paid to activate this effect. So you are able to potentially get rid of 2, maybe 3 of your opponent's weaker monsters. Each of these effects can only be used once per turn, but it's a good way of disrupting your opponent if you remove their combo pieces before they can actually use them properly. Humid Winds is a continuous trap card. The effect is you can pay 1,000 life points and add 1 aroma monster from your deck to your hand. If your life points are lower than your opponent's, you can gain 500 life points. You can only use each effect of Humid Winds once per turn. The first part effect, just by paying 1,000 life points, lets you consistently search for your monsters from your deck to your hand. This could be beneficial as a consistent way of getting exactly what you need rather than relying on random luck to draw into what you want. If your life points have to be lower than the opponent's, you also gain 500 life points. So suppose that's actually the benefit of if you have to pay the costs to bring those cards out. This is a decent effect and is quite useful within the archetype. Overall, the Aroma Seraphy archetype is really useful and it's got separate different abilities and cards. You've got several different incarnations of the deck and each works well with gaining life points and paying life points in order to disrupt your opponent and to destroy their cards. It works well within the Sun Avalon deck, as well as the Reapers and any additional cards that we're getting in the future, including the Ragnarika, which is the Link monsters. Overall, it's quite decent, and I can imagine we're getting more support in the future. This is supposed to be the archetype that is coming soon and expecting next month for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. We'll wait and see if it does get its release in September, but as of what I've seen from various videos by a couple of different YouTubers, that is supposedly what we're about to get. I'd love to know what your opinions are of these cards down below in the comments section. Make sure to like the video, it really helps support the channel, and thank you if you consider subscribing.